Dr. Claire Maguire, and this week I want to talk around boundaries. Boundaries are a big thing, and it's something that people talk about a lot and how to set them, and really ultimately a boundary is something that's to keep you safe and to make relationships work, okay? But what I want to talk about is how do we effectively communicate a boundary to another person? Because really what we're trying to say is this is acceptable and this is not acceptable. That's ultimately your boundary. This is okay with me and that's not okay with me. And each and every one of us can have very different things that are okay for us and things that are not okay for us. And I'm talking about the way that we might look after ourselves, the way that we interact with people, conversations that we can have, what we will tolerate, what we will not tolerate. And because it's so different for different people, just because something is not acceptable to you doesn't necessarily translate to another person unless you actually communicate it to them and have a conversation. Because very often what we can do with a boundary is we go, well, that's not acceptable, I don't like that, that's this, that, the next thing and everything, and we will set this boundary and we put it right up like this, sort of cast iron fence with barbed wire around the top, and it becomes impenetrable. It's like, well, that's just not okay with me, and you just push everybody away. And it's like, the other person, doesn't perhaps even know you've set the boundary, or they might not agree with what you're saying. And, you're not then letting them come in to really put across their point of view or what they might decide. And I'm talking here with people that are healthy, in inverted commas, people. They're not toxic, they're not abusive, they're not, out to be nasty to you. They're just kind people, loving people that really want the best for you and the best for themselves, okay? So that's kind of the relationship that we're talking about within this. And if you're setting a boundary and it's sort of just, up high like this and you're pushing people away, it's sort of like avoiding a conversation that needs to be had. So you're avoiding having maybe a difficult conversation with somebody because, you just want yourself to be right, okay? You want to be right, all right? Whereas really what we should be doing is to sort of say, this is what is acceptable to me and this is what is not acceptable to me. How do you feel about it? What are your thoughts around that? What is acceptable to you and unacceptable to you? Did you realise that that was affecting me in a certain way, that I feel that way, or, it hurts me when you do that? These are conversations that we need to be having so that the other person can start to say, oh, I didn't realise, oh, I'm sorry about that, this is what happens when you say this is how it makes me feel, and so on and so forth. And so we have this conversation, and what we're doing is bringing down this really big cast iron fence, with the barbed wire at the top, bringing it all the way down to a little wooden fence, a little picket fence with you on one side and the person on the other side, and you're sort of like, talking, and therefore you negotiate, and you're negotiating with each other what is then acceptable and not acceptable within that relationship that you have. Now, this relationship can be a romantic relationship, it can be a relationship with friends, it can be a relationship with family, and it can also be a work relationship. So, we have these different dynamics obviously within our life, but all of them, we need to have this conversation, and it might bring up things that, you don't want to confront, or it might bring up things that you don't want to hear the answer to. Okay? Because the other person will have an opinion and you might not want to hear it. So remember, when we push it right up, you're blocking out that other person's opinion. You're blocking out the other person's thoughts. You're blocking out the other person's feelings. And we want to bring it back down here to talk about it. And from there, we establish the boundary. We establish the boundary of what is acceptable and not acceptable for that particular relationship. Because remember, relationships involve more than one person. Okay, so I want you to really think about it and to have a think about, the boundaries in your life with people, what you want and what you think the other person might want as well. And, have a conversation around it and see what you can therefore together create. Okay, so I hope that's been helpful, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye.